Hello everybody, welcome to Sensible Fitness. In today's video, we're going to talk about why calories are and are not the most important thing for fat loss. Why are calories important? Obviously, for fat loss, calories are scientifically speaking the only thing that matters. Right? If you're not in a caloric deficit, then no trick, no fancy hack, drinking lemon water, your fat loss teas, none of that will work for fat loss. Fats are just a form of energy. They're just a way that the body stores energy. When the body uses more energy than it receives, it then has to dip into these fat stores and use these energy. Over a long period of time, if you continue being in a deficit, your body will use up these fat stores, and that is what causes fat loss. So calories definitely work. If they didn't work, you would basically be breaking the first law of thermodynamics and you would be changing the field of thermodynamics and physics. So calories do work. That's why they're important. However, human beings are not machines. Now, yes, while technically you could just put them in a caloric deficit and they lose weight, that's not really going to help someone in the long run. That's not really going to lead them to a more healthier state of mind or to healthier habits. For example, if you put someone on, say, a vegan diet, and you could put them in a very low calorie vegan diet, and that will put them in a massive caloric deficit for sure. However, if that person doesn't like a vegan diet, they most likely will not be in that diet for even a week. It's probably going to be a lot less. And as soon as they stop, that diet, they'll go back to their old habits, they'll go back to their old caloric balance, and they'll go back to their old weight. So it's going to be completely pointless. Yes, you put them in a caloric deficit, but you did it through a method that is completely unsustainable. And that's why that person did not lose fat. Similarly, let's say you were to put someone into a caloric deficit by cutting out an entire macronutrient. For example, let's say the low carb diet or the no carb diet. Or if you were to be in a caloric deficit by only eating junk food. Now, in both those cases, because you are in a caloric deficit, you will be losing fat. Right? You are in a caloric deficit, your body is using more calories than it receives, you will lose fat. However, in the first case, you're cutting out an entire macronutrient and you're sort of demonizing it, which is again not healthy in the long run. And of course, the body needs all three macronutrients. All three macronutrients are important for the body. And in the second case, yes, you are in a caloric deficit and you will lose fat, but you're doing it by just eating junk food. You're basically cutting out vegetables, you're basically cutting out whole foods. Yes, because you're in a caloric deficit, you will lose fat, but it definitely isn't healthy in the long run. This is, of course, not even mentioning the fact that if you're eating calorically dense junk food, you're going to be hungry throughout the day. Yes, you're going to be in a calorie deficit, but you're going to be miserable throughout. The fact of the matter is that the fat loss journey is a very, very, very slow journey. You could be in a caloric deficit of 1,000 calories a day, which is, by the way, a very, very difficult thing to actually maintain. You could be in a caloric deficit of 1,000 calories a day and you will only lose 1 kg per week. Less than that, as a matter of fact. You might lose around 0.9 kgs of fat per week. And that is if you're keeping it at an unrealistically high caloric deficit of 1,000 calories. And of course, there are other factors as well. For example, if someone is trying to lose weight, and let's say that they come from a family with a history of obesity. Being in a family that has a lot of obese people, losing weight and indeed being in a caloric deficit is a lot more difficult because that particular person will be surrounded by people who do have unhealthy eating habits and who will constantly try to push those unhealthy eating habits on this particular person. Food lying around, people offering you calorically dense foods, people offering you foods that do not have a lot of nutritional value, and all of these factors can affect a person. Yes, calories are the only thing that matters, but these can affect how much of a caloric deficit they can actually be in a sustainable long-term manner. Now, there is of course the matter of exercise. Now, yes, you don't need to exercise. If you're in a caloric deficit, you will lose fat. But long-term, exercise is brilliant. Exercise is very, very helpful for your health. Not just, keeping you more resistant to injury, of course, but it's very, very beneficial to your cardiovascular health as well. And over the long term, as discussed in the Muscles for Fat Loss video, the link to which I'll put in the cards and in the description, building muscles over the long term is brilliant for fat loss because it does add more calories in the long run, and of course can improve your metabolism and your immunity in the long run. So adding exercises, while not necessary, to lose fat, can definitely help you lose fat. And this is of course not even discussing the mental aspect of it. If you're in, say, a caloric deficit of 300 calories per day, then yes, you will lose a certain amount of fat. Now, if you were to go from, say, 300 calories to 600 calories, then yes, you would lose more fat. And if you are obese, then losing more fat will definitely be healthy for you. However, if moving from a caloric deficit to 300 calories to a caloric deficit of 600 calories takes a huge mental toll on you. The sort of measuring your food, making sure that you don't eat certain kinds of foods, reducing the amount of processed foods you have, maybe even having to give up some of your favorite foods just to reach this massive goal of 600 calories per day. If that takes a huge mental pressure on you, if giving up all of this and putting in this much effort to be in a net caloric deficit of 600 calories per day takes a huge mental toll, then yes, it is healthy in terms of fat loss, because it's obviously a higher caloric deficit than 300 calories, and therefore you will lose fat faster. However, when you just take a step back and look at the whole picture, it really isn't that healthy for you, because even at a caloric deficit of 300 calories, you would have lost fat. Yes, it would have been slower, obviously, but you would still be losing fat, but you would not have this huge mental pressure that you do when you're trying to lose weight at a net caloric deficit of 600 calories per day. And finally, of course, is your needs. Not just your situation or your liking, but your needs. Like, do you need to lose a huge amount of fat in a short period of time? Most people want to lose 50 kgs in a year. But, let's just be honest. Most of us did not gain that weight in such a small period of time, and we won't lose it. But more importantly, do you need to lose it? Now, if you're someone, let's say, you need to have life-saving surgery and the only thing preventing you is your body fat percentage, and you need to lose that weight, then yeah, fair enough. Then maybe you have to go to the hospital and get professional help and be put in a massive caloric deficit under proper supervision in order to help you lose that fat very, very quickly. But for most of us, we don't need to lose the weight. Yes, we want to lose the weight, but we don't actually need to lose that weight in such a short period of time. So there is really no point in being in a super huge caloric deficit if you don't actually need to lose the weight that quickly. Because as discussed previously, you could put yourself in a huge amount of caloric deficit through completely unsustainable habits, get fed up of those habits within 2 weeks, and then quit forever. Or you could be in a much smaller caloric deficit through habits that you can actually enjoy, that you can actually sustain in the long run. And yeah, you will lose fat a lot slower for sure, but you will be able to lose the fat and keep it off in the long run. And this is of course a lot more important if you're just trying to lose the fat for your general health. You do have a lot more flexible timeline in which to lose the fat. You don't need to lose the fat in a very short period of time. So you can be in a much smaller caloric deficit and lose the weight at a much, much slower rate. And having that extra time and going slower allows you to develop healthier habits, both eating habits, exercise habits, and just healthier habits in general. So ultimately, the only thing that matters for fat loss is being in a caloric deficit. If you're not in a caloric deficit, you won't lose fat. But how you get into a state of caloric deficit, how high your caloric deficit is, and indeed what you do to get into that caloric deficit, what you eat, how much you exercise, what time period you want to lose that fat in, all of that is extremely flexible and should be customized for your particular lifestyle so that you can then take it up in a sustainable manner and actually lose the fat and keep it off in the long run. Thank you very much for watching. That was the video on why calories are and are not the most important thing for fat loss. If you like the video, like, share and subscribe. Please do click the bell icon to be notified every time a new video drops. If you have any doubts, comments, questions or topic ideas on which you would like me to make a full-fledged video like this one, please do leave it in the comment section down below. Please do also follow the channel on all other social media platforms. If you're interested in conversations about music, please do check out the Basic Travel podcast. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.